Is there more regulation today than there was before? I mean, given all the publicity that you see on regulation in the newspapers every day, you get that sense that there is more regulation today.
Well, I would say it this way. When I came into the banking business, it was very heavily regulated. You know, you couldn't even bank across state lines. There was something called Regulation Q. You could not offer a savings account at more than 5%. Your lending, the prime was determined by regulation. So it was a highly regulated, from a product and from a geography, highly regulated in the, prior to the 1980s. Then it deregulated because, again, you had this concentration problem if you didn't. So they deregulated products, pricing, geography. And then and we were in that mode until this crisis. So it was less, there was still a lot of regulation, but a lot of, when it comes to products and geography, it was very deregulated. But with the advent of Dodd-Frank, I would say the regulatory burden today is multiple times greater than it's ever been since it was deregulated back.
It's 2,000 pages of
regulation. Well, and the 2,000 pages, but there's going to be tens of thousands of pages of further regulation. The 2,000 pages just said the regulator, go do this. Now the regulators come up and when they implement the regulation, there's another 1,000 pages. But the thing I want to emphasize is that the Dodd-Frank bill would not have prevented the last crisis and will not prevent the next crisis. The regulation is more of an anger and punishment of banks, even ones who did no wrong, for this crisis than it is, in my opinion, to ensure that that a crisis never occurs again. I'll say two things to support that. What does limiting debit card fees have to do with risk and the risk of bank failure? In fact, it hurts. It increases the probability of a bank failure because about 5 to 10% of our fees are now gone, and debit cards were of no risk. In fact, for a small bank, I think the real travesty of this is I don't know how a small bank can survive with Dodd-Frank. Dodd-Frank was proposed to be, we're going to be able to eliminate big banks from growing. Look, at the one thing you know for sure about increased regulation is that it increases concentration. Because who wants to enter a business which is highly regulated? The marginal players leave you. Look at all the highly regulated industries: pharmaceuticals, telephones, cable television, network television, railroads, airplanes, nuclear reactors, cigarettes. They're all concentrated, more concentrated than industries that are not regulated. So they're doing the opposite of what they should be doing. And it's and what happened in this crisis, in my opinion, was about 20 financial institutions, most were not commercial banks, were the problem, not the 8,000 banks, and it was a failure of regulators, not regulations. So let me ask you a rhetorical question. Would you agree that Citicorp had some of the problems in this financial crisis, that caused some of the issues?
Yep.
So what regulatory authority did the Federal Reserve not have to rein in the risk of Citicorp prior to this crisis?
Was not applied, you mean?
I can't think of any. And yet, they're saying that they didn't have the authority.
They weren't looking. Final question. The future of America itself. We're doing this interview, this conversation in Singapore. What do you see about Asia from where you sit in San Francisco that makes you reflect about the future of America, and how do you think that future should play out?
Well, I have never been more concerned about the future of America than I am now. When I grew up, we were a country that for every generation since our founding in 1776, the new generation had a higher standard of living, expected to have a higher standard of living than the previous generation. It happened for every generation. One of the most important reasons why that occurred was good education. So, myself and my siblings were the first people to go to college in my family. But if you had a good education, the sky was the limit, and you could be anything you wanted to be. And we were a free enterprise system. You could make a lot of money if you were good. You could, etc. You could start companies. It was just a vibrant economy with every generation, new generation, expecting to do better than the previous generation. That is not the case in America today. My children, that generation, will be the first one that will have a lower standard of living, and the question is, will their children have it even lower? Are we sinking? And yet, I come to Asia, and I've been coming here now for about 30 years, and I see just exactly that same kind of momentum that we used to have. Every generation is going to have a higher standard of living than the previous one. The educational levels are much higher than they are in the United States of America, and that's why you know it's going to continue to be that way. There are entrepreneurs here. Every country you go to, you see new businesses being created, and they're competing on the worldwide stage, just like America was doing.
So what does America need to do to stop that slide? I mean, it's probably just a doorstop that's required to stop the slide.
I think what seems to happen in America is we have to suffer so badly that we finally do the right thing. And I think that's probably what's happening right now. I think that people there's all kinds of changes that are going on politically, and we'll see which direction that we head. And I am confident that we will, America will come back because we always have had to kind of go to the precipice before we start doing the right thing. But it is scary. I think we're heading down a path, quite frankly, towards the European model. And that has never worked.
Where the state is large and entrepreneurship is small.
France today, 56% of their GDP is the state. And France has never had an unemployment rate lower than 7% for 30 years. That's what we want to be. And that's where our policies are heading, in my opinion. And I think it's a mistake. That's not to say we don't need to make changes, and there were some sins that were made that need to be corrected. But the fundamental in my opinion, the fundamental way to create increased wealth for everybody is the free enterprise system. And I think if you look at the countries that are doing well today versus the ones that aren't, those countries are freer today than they were in the past. The businesses are freer. It's closer to free enterprise, and they have a highly improved and educated workforce coming, much better than the previous generation. That's what worked for America. That's what's working for Asia today, and we got to get back to that.
Dick, we could have a longer conversation on that, and your views on all of that front is very inspiring, and the story that you've built already is a benchmark for the rest of us. So I hope that we'll be able to talk again at some time in the future.
I'm going to enjoy that, Emmanuel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.